Welcome back to Proper Madness. I'm happy to have you back if you're a returning listener. If you're a new listener, my name is Sabby, and I have a very unique perspective on mental health. I believe wholeheartedly that we can turn anything that we have been through and alchemize it into bettering ourselves mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. It helps you feel less alone, to know and understand that the way out is always through the eye of the storm. Grab a cup of tea. If you're not a tea drinker, grab your coffee, and let's sit down and tune into ourselves so that we can learn to connect to other people. We never know the weight of our words and how they might help someone. Hi, hello, welcome back. I know it's been a little while since I've sat down and talked to you face to face. I've had so many wonderful guests on my podcast before this, and then I was very busy with moving and my birthday. And obviously, if you've been following me for quite some time, you can tell I'm clearly no longer in my black walled cocoon and my walls are red, which means I moved. I'm no longer in my old place. And so with that's come a lot of transition, a lot of a lot of things have been moving super fast in my life. So I haven't really had a moment to get grounded and centered and show up and connect to everyone. So this is me sitting down and connecting. But yeah, it's I always know when I'm feeling creatively blocked, it's because I have something to say that needs to be released. And usually that's like an inner truth that maybe I haven't had a chance to admit. And for me, creating and art and quote content or social media is a mirror to how we feel and think about ourselves, right? So I'm sitting here going, all right, well, there's very clearly something I need to get off my chest that's probably going to help someone, but also is going to help me, obviously. That's why I do what I do. I do it because I love it and because through my way of figuring things out, it helps other people too, right? So that's kind of what this episode's going to be about. There's been so many transitions in my life. I've had a very hard time going back to my old creative routine of showing up and expressing because the way that I was used to doing that was not very healthy, to be completely, not in like a toxic way, but just me reflecting and looking back at how I was showing up kind of is highlighting to me a lot of ways where I had a lot of overlap in working, resting, pleasure, and creativity, right? So in my old place, it was basically my bedroom was like a studio apartment. So I had my bed, right across from my bed was my desk, above that was a TV, right? And then we all remember my very dreamy big open window. My walls were black, only a couple of them. Then to my left was my pole, like my dancing area. Behind that, my filming area. Then my shower, my bathroom, and then past that, a walk-in closet. Now let's add into this, I have my little espresso machine also there. So, really cool setup. However, not healthy in terms of separating like creation, rest, play, and working. So, all these different areas of my life were like so interwoven that I never really knew what it was like to really rest or to really work. I kind of was always like overlapping in all these areas. And now that I'm in a space where I have a separate office, I have a separate bedroom. Oh, guess what? My dance area is downstairs in a different space. My espresso machine in the kitchen. And so now that I have healthy separation, it's almost like my creativity was a little codependent on my environment and I never switched off. And so coming here, it's been a bit of a learning curve for me because I've been a little hard on myself because I haven't been in my normal creativity, but I feel like it's very normal considering my environment has changed drastically. My life has changed. A lot of things are moving very fast, and my inner world has changed because that old place while it was beautiful and wonderful, there was so much pain there, so much darkness, so much chaos, but also a lot of creation and a lot of magic, right? And so it was almost like this swirling vortex of like all these different energies all the time that always felt very overwhelming. And then I came here and it's like, I'm quiet, I'm grounded, I'm present, I'm steady. And so it's an interesting thing when your creativity, you feeling productive, your success, without you even realizing it, was from an environment that was born from chaos. And from that chaos was my becoming. Because in that same place, that's when my very first, um, you know, actually not even, because within that place, I experienced so much pain on and off, like I had so many moments that brought me down, but then I'd have to transmute it and overcome it and come back up. Then I had so many moments of high amounts of creativity and starting my business and my platform. That's where I started my whole entire platform. And so to leave a place very quickly, not for any negative reason, but to leave a place very quickly where you have so much emotion attached to it, it's not an easy thing to do. And I think we overlook like our homes and where we live and our environments and just how big of an impact it can actually have on us mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and creatively. Right. And so now I'm a little bit more productive, um, but my creativity has been a little off kilter because, and I had this a little bit of a realization with this whole move, and the whole move and my birthday and actually so a little bit of a catch up for you, right? I've had some high moments of success. Like I've become a published photographer. My photo of a client that I took was published in a magazine, which is huge. For any photographer, that's like the biggest honor ever. And with that success, it showed me very quickly who always supported me and who were just silent people in the background watching to see what I was doing. And then my birthday showed me who my real friends were, and who the people were in my life that just kind of benefited off of being around me because it made them feel better. And quite honestly, maybe I was benefiting off of them because they made me feel better. And we all do shit like that. Like, you can't sit there and be like, oh, I've never been friends with someone because I felt like I would feel better around them. No, you have. We all have. We've all been that person. On top of that, having to cut out like a million and a half different cycles of like what I've cutting out different pieces and parts of like what I've always wanted in a partner and how that was showing up in my life and having to actively work through that and having to actively start saying no a lot faster and then realizing like with some form of success comes a little bit more loneliness. But anyways, it's like it's hard. It's not easy. And I kind of understand why people who I always had this I would always take it personally when I looked up to a creator or someone online or a celebrity. I'm not calling myself a celebrity. I need you to relax. But if I ever looked up to someone who had more success than me and they were almost keeping me at arm's length, I never personally understood why, because my intentions were always pretty pure. But I can understand what the other person probably was thinking and feeling when you kind of like when we are too nice and too like, oh my God, I'm your biggest, not biggest fan, but like giving someone too many compliments too quickly, it comes across as like, what does this person want from me, right? So I would notice that I would do that sometimes, but not out of any malice. It's because I genuinely, looked up to this person or these people. And now I'm seeing what it's like to have the shoe on the other foot. To have some form of success in whatever capacity that is, um, and then watch very carefully how people tend to shapeshift really quickly around you. Some people get really quiet, and then you understand very quickly, oh, they never really believed in me, did they? That was a hard thing to figure out. And then realizing how many people just want to hitchhike onto your success or what you're doing well in your life with and for. Like when people found out that I moved, all of a sudden, a lot of people wanted to hang out with me more, and I just stopped and I went, hang on, where were you when I didn't live in a home, like this? Where were you when I was like struggling and I needed the advice and I needed the companionship and the friendship? But now you want to be friends with me because I don't know. It's interesting. It's always interesting to see how that plays out. And I think with all those changes happening very quickly around me, along with moving, my creativity suffered a little bit because I stopped and I went, well, hang on, I'm used to creating like these very moody, dramatic things. Um, because the place that I felt the most inspired by was my environment. We will always feel the most inspired by our environment, whether we're cognizant of it or not. Right? So, like the environment that I used to live in, I was always inspired by chaos, pain, dark, broody emotions, intensity, high highs, low lows, because those were all the things that I experienced in that place. Then you switch environments. I come here, grounded energy, peace, happiness, space, expansion. And suddenly, that creativity and that need and want for success just kind of like left the building. It's almost like most of like what my body really was craving and needing and wanting was safety, was to be held, was to just slow down and not have to do anything for once. And so then the challenge came of like, well, how do I find beauty in the moments that don't bring me pain? Which sounds kind of crazy. Which sounds like, Sabby, are you okay? No, I think it's like a lot of us who have been through a lot of heavy, dark shit in life. What happens is we tend to get used to finding beauty in the chaos, right? I literally have tattooed on my forearm, if you can see it. Embrace the depths of chaos. Because that's all I had ever known. I never knew what it was like to feel safe. I never knew what it was like to just feel grounded and held and comforted and in an environment that just brings me genuine peace. So I would look for that feeling through romantic partnerships, through friendships, through who knows what else, through vacations. Because I always felt like I needed to find it outside of me instead of realizing that it was always within me all along. I just was in an environment that like was meant to be there, I think, at that time for me to become who I am today. So then there comes that separation in our identities that we formed in our environments. And so when you form an identity in one environment and then you change environments, then your identity, you just go, whoa, who the hell am I? Because you don't know who you are outside of where you're from. That can go for a lot of things in life, right? For me, it's a very basic example of a place that I was living, but say you're in a long-term relationship and you become a version of yourself. Well, when that relationship ends, you're going to stop and go, oh my gosh, who am I? Because I became a version of myself to fit this environment so that I felt more comfortable instead of realizing that my identity, who I am, and what I stand for has nothing to do with where I am and has everything to do with who I am. That sounds a little counterintuitive considering I just said I changed environments and now I feel different. Yes, but I think it has less to do with the environment and more to do with the conditioning that I gave myself when I was in a different environment. I shape-shifted myself to adapt, to survive, to be productive, to be successful, right? But then I come here, there's no shape-shifting, there's just being. I paint my wall a color I actually kind of vibe with a little bit more because I painted my entire bedroom black because I was so pissed off at the world for trying to tell me that I needed to be lighter, be brighter, to smile more, to be happier. And I just like I was sick and tired of it, right? So I had always been like a very, very rebellious person. If you've been on my platform for a while, you know that to be true. And so at 30 years old, my biggest rebellion was like, well, I'm gonna relive my goth phase. But if I didn't do that, then Tea Time with Sabby never would have been born. My branding and my quote aesthetic on my social media platforms and who I am never would have happened. Because of those small moments where we feel like people are placing projections onto our identity, and there's a part of you that wants to rebel and scream out and prove something, that part of you is like the real part of you. Kind of begging and screaming and waiting for you to just like let them free because you've allowed what other people think about you to suffocate who you actually are. So imagine being in a space where I created that, right? I created that energy. I created that whole environment energetically. So then my art was born out of proving something to people. My business was born out of trying to like finally self-express and be me and be creative, right? And then my ideas were always born from chaos, and so it's kind of funny because like I would always kind of attract that. I always would attract like high highs and low lows in my life because I set up my identity to want to crave that environment for my creativity. Now I'm in an environment where, oh my gosh, well, it's a blank slate, isn't it? I have a whole canvas in front of me of how I want to create my space. I have a whole canvas in front of me of who I am. I already know who I am though, right? So if I pick up a paintbrush and I just start painting an idea of what I think people should, want me to be, then I'm just going to be shape shifting again in another environment. And then eventually I could move again. I'll probably move in with a partner next, right? Buy a home with them. And when that happens, if I change my identity again, my gosh, I'm just going to be running further and further and further away from me. So when I came here, it's like I just showed up as me and I didn't adapt myself to my environment. I've adapted my environment to who I am. There's a big difference, right? Because adapting my environment to who I am, I'm not looking for an outcome. Adapting me to my environment and vice versa, I'm looking for an outcome and I'm looking for validation. So, to embody more of this grounded presence and rest, and to allow my creativity to come from truth and presence and grounding and something calm and expansive is going to be different. So a part of me probably doesn't know what that's going to look like, and I'm a little scared, I'm like scared of how it's going to come across online. I'm scared of like if all my followers are going to keep following me, or if they might unfollow me because they're used to very dramatic shit. No, I don't think so, right? That's just a narrative I'm giving myself in my head instead of allowing myself to just show up and not care about what anyone else thinks, not care who stays or who goes. I've already noticed that, like, since I've dropped out of a less aggressive energy, a lot of people have left. And I think it's honestly because who we are online mirrors back to people either who they want to be or who they feel like they are, right? And some people just love to live in the darkness. Some people just love to thrive in it because that's all they know. And I get it, but you are the master of your own fate. And I can't take credit of that beautiful line because Timothy Chalamet said that, or someone else. But it's true. You are the master of who you are, and your environment does not dictate who you are. You dictate your environment. You dictate how people treat you when you show up in a certain space for the most part. Everything is a mirror. Lately, people have been like, "Oh my gosh, you just seem lighter. You seem more grounded. You seem like you." I'm like, "Yeah, because I'm not trying to pretend to be someone I'm not to fit an environment." Because a little part of me, when I painted my whole room, that dark, moody aesthetic, felt like I needed, like, even though I had moments of not feeling that way, I felt like I needed to shapeshift to feel like I fit in. But then there was always a part of me that wanted to leave. There was always a part of me that wanted to flee. There's always a part of me that thought about, okay, well, like, what if I like feel happy, but then my walls are bloody black and I don't know you know what I mean? Like, it's like I always had a very small inner turmoil within myself of like the protector part of me, which is that darker side, and then the more, I don't even want to say enlightened, I don't think that's the right word, but like the quote lighter side of me, instead of realizing, hey, why do you have to pick? You can just be both, right? You can be in your duality. You can live in it. It's the same thing with who you are and your environment and who you surround yourself with. That's actually why I say be careful of who you surround yourself with. Because whatever habits they have are the habits you're going to adopt. The same with your environment, right? So my environment with work and resting and pleasure and creativity and getting ready, and with all those things being so close together, what's probably happening is I never really had a chance to like switch off. So my brain was always on. I was always creative. I was always working. I was always in a state of pleasure. I was always in a state of rest. That might sound really cool. No, we should have healthy boundaries with work, with pleasure, with rest, with creativity. Because if you don't have those healthy boundaries, how are you going to develop a relationship with those things where you don't burn yourself out, you know? Where you don't go over the top, where you don't like use up every single one of those pieces because you feel like you can't get enough of one. I think there's something wonderful to be said about who you actually are, and that you should never change yourself to fit an environment. Ever. And obviously it depends, right? Like if you're in a community and you don't fit in, you can't change the community, but you can change the community that you surround yourself with. So then you actually feel like yourself and not like you're fighting an uphill battle, you know? Obviously, I'm using my bedroom as like a little bit of an example, but it was enough to highlight to me so many things that like I had a hard time kind of processing. So for me, when I sit down and I do these podcasts and I do it to help other people, but also it's a great way for me to process. It's a great way for me to understand what's going on. And as I'm speaking, all of a sudden, like I have a lot more creativity. Because I think whenever we're not being honest with ourselves, it creates a block with the flow of ideas and creation and self expression that we need to have. This podcast started as like a mental health podcast for a long time. And obviously, that's like changed quite a bit because now it's become more of a place where I just tell people stories because that's what I do for a living. You know, that's what I do. I think the greatest joy that I've had in my business so far is like having the ability to tell someone else's story visually for them. and then also mentoring people who just have a hard time telling their story, and how do they show up and do that online? There's been something kind of wonderful in just stepping into a new chapter and realizing that I don't have to skip ahead. I think like we love to try to control our own narrative. We love to try to control how we think things are going to turn out. I didn't plan for this, and to be honest, like I wake up every morning feeling so blessed to be in the space that I'm in. I wake up every morning feeling really blessed that like I'm not in a state of emotional and mental chaos all the time. I think like to be in a space where you just feel safe is going to feel new and foreign and weird when it happens for the first time. And that's honestly probably because I learned how to do that from within first, right? And now my reality is reflecting that back to me. And that's all that I can ask for. But I think sometimes we want to find pleasure in the chaos. We want to find creativity in the darkness. But what happens when you're actually finally happy? If your creativity is always coming from pain, then you're going to keep creating painful moments so you keep becoming creative. And I was kind of sick and tired of that. So I'm excited for whatever the heck art I'm going to create here. I don't know what I'm going to do. I've been trying to script a few things, like a few shorts that I love to put on social media. I'm shooting my first short film. So that's coming up soon. And yeah, I expect my mentoring and my teaching and how I help other people to be something that will be a little bit more prominent because it's been really rewarding for me. And honestly, I've just been really excited to like get up every morning and create art for a living and then also help people. So, yeah. There's a little catch up for you. You're probably going to see a few podcasts with some guests for a few weeks, but I'm going to try to pop on here and do my solo episodes again because honestly, I love sitting down and doing this, and I'm a fan of the red walls, to be honest. It's like very, you know what we need? I think we need like 10 more plants. We do. Or just drop your comments below. Like, what do you think? If you're watching this on YouTube, what do you think? Like I have a speaker there, obviously, duh. The light is lighting. I don't know, but we need something cool here, I think. I'm just thinking like hanging plants. Anyways, I love you guys so much. Thank you for loving me unconditionally. And yeah, I'm excited to see what's to come. I don't know I have no idea. I have no clue. I don't know. But we're gonna do it together. Because this is a community, not the Sabby show. Okay, I love you. Goodbye. Adios. I encourage you to follow, like, subscribe, and rate this so that it pushes it out to whoever else might need it. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you ever want to chat more about anything that this podcast is about, you know where to find me. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and good old TikTok. And be sure to stay tuned for my Tea Time with Sabby episodes.